guests this morning. If you will stand with me, turn to the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 1. Daniel chapter 1, starting at verse 1. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands, along with some of the vessels of the house of God, and he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasury of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of the officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal families and of the nobles, youths in whom was no defect, who were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had the ability for serving in the king's court. And he ordered him to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. The king appointed for them a daily ration from the king's choice food and from the wine which he drank, and appointed that they should be educated 3 years, at the end of which they would enter into the king's personal service. Now among them, from the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Then the commander of the officials assigned new names to them, and to Daniel he assigned the name Belshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. Cut me down, please. You may be seated. This morning we are starting a new series of fully devoted followers of Christ. Cut me down a bit, please. Fully devoted followers of Christ. You'll note as we go out into the lobby, you will see a little placard out there. I guess it's not a plaque, it's a, what do you call that thing? A banner, yeah, a banner. You see a banner out there that will have fully devoted followers of Christ on it. And that is what we stand for here at Rising Star. There's 6 principles of being a fully devoted follower of Christ. And every member here should know what those are. I'm not going to test you this week, but in the weeks to come, I'll ask that you stand and that you recite these. Just know that they are all starting with C, on purpose, okay? So to be a fully devoted follower of Christ, first of all, you must be committed to God. Secondly, you must be competent in God's Word. And so it's not enough to be committed to God and competent in His Word, but you also must be competent in your walk. That is, you have to live out what you know. It's one thing for us to know something, but it's something totally different for us to live out that reality, amen? So competence in God's Word, committed to God, competent in God's Word, competent in our walk, and then connected to the body, and then connected to the lost, and then contributing to the needs of the body. And I will add, not only the needs of the body, but those outside of the body, because they will know that we are Christian by our love and how we serve, not just each other, but how we also serve the world. So I wanted to go over this series, especially in light of the fact that on Wednesdays we are looking at the discipleship, the disciple-making church. This year will be heavy on disciple-making. After all, that is the great commission that God has given us, to go into the world and make disciples, amen? baptizing them in the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that I've commanded you, he says, and lo, I am with you, even always, even until the end of the age. You know, I had the great honor of going to Dallas Seminary, and one of the benefits of going to Dallas Seminary was your spouses were able to take the classes that you took. Even in college now, you can go to any major university and you have the opportunity to take a class, to audit a class. Now, there's some pros and cons to auditing a class. You know, at seminary, you have some of the greatest professors of all time that went to Dallas Seminary, and my wife, because I was a student there, because I was committed to learning and studying there, she had the benefit of auditing classes. As you know, to audit a class means that you can go to the class, you can sit under the same professor, you can get the same information in class, and you don't even have to take the test. You don't have to write nary paper. You don't got to turn in any reports. You can just go day after day and listen to the professor and gather all the information, and you don't even have to take a test. Isn't that wonderful? The con is, when you audit a class, you don't get credit for what you put in. And I'm afraid that many of us have an auditing mentality when it comes to a commitment to God. We come to church week after week. We listen to the professor preach a sermon. Every week we go to Bible study. We do all of these things, but we're not really committed to the information, not enough to take the test. And so this morning I want to talk about the first of the 6 fully devoted followers of Christ, principles for being a fully devoted follower of Christ, and that is being committed to God. I'm calling us to move beyond auditing. I'm calling us as believers to commit to being a fully devoted follower of Christ. In fact, before I get started, I want to just highlight a few definitions. To be devoted is to be given over to the display, a study, or discussion of. To be committed, to be devoted is to be given over to the display or study. That is to be devoted and committed are one and the same. I forget who it was. I forget the Motown group that it says, you need devotion. Is that Earth, Wind & Fire? It says, you need devotion. I might have Bob come up here and sing a little bit. If we're going to be a fully devoted follower of Christ, we need devotion. And our devotion needs to be given over to fully following the principles of Christianity. Another definition is commitment. Commitment is the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause or activity. It is a binding pledge to a certain course or policy. What we lack, and not just here in Rising Star, I would say in the body of Christ as a whole, most churches have 20% of the people doing 100% of the work. And it all really boils down to commitment. We have 20% that are actually taking the course, that are taking the test. And then we have 80% that are auditing the course. As we look at our text this morning in verses 8 through 21 of here in Daniel. The first 7 verses are somewhat of an introduction to the book of Daniel. This is a familiar story, but when I think about commitment to God, Daniel stands out as one of those biblical characters that highlights what it really means to be committed to God. Let's look at our text in verse 8 of Daniel chapter 1. It reads, "But Daniel made up in his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank." Now remember, in verses 3 through 7, we see that the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of the officials, to bring some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles, youths of whom was no defect, whom were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had the ability for serving in the king's court. And he ordered to teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans. And so these young men are taken into bondage. And the king says, among those young men that are taken into bondage, I want you to select the best, the brightest, the most good-looking young men, and I want you to train them up so that they can serve in my court. And among those was a young man and 3 of his boys that we know as the Hebrew boys. In verse 8, we'll see if we're going to be committed to God, we must understand that commitment is a first-class choice. Commitment is a first-class choice. It says, but Daniel, I know what the king has ordered. The king has ordered that you take these young men, and they had the privilege of being able to eat from the king's delicacy. In other words, they were the best and the brightest, and he was going to treat them like royalty so that they could learn how to serve in the king's palace. But Daniel made up his mind. Say, made up his mind. Listen, if you're going to be committed to God, it's a mindset. You've got to make up your mind that you are going to serve God, because there are many opportunities for those who say they love Christ to compromise. And if you're going to be a fully devoted follower of Christ, you've got to have a made-up mind. Amen? How many know that when you make up your mind that you're going to serve God, you got to know that the enemy is going to be coming against you? Some of y'all thought that once I make up my mind that I'm going to start going to church, then hopefully things will get better. But you might find that because you have made up your mind to serve God, things won't get better. You will be attacked on every hand. And the question is, are you committed to God? Many of us are committed to God as long as things are going our way. Commitment to God is not a negotiation. Lord, if I do this, then you do that. You realize that some folks have a negotiation mentality when it comes to God, and God is not a God that you can negotiate with. He is the sovereign ruler of all mankind. But look at Daniel. He says, Daniel, he assigned the name Belshazzar to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel made up his mind that he would not, defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. Now Daniel understood something. That Daniel understood that eating from the king's choice table would be compromising. He called it, he said that he wouldn't defile himself. I would imagine many of the other Hebrew boys looked at it as a great opportunity. They looked at themselves as almost like Olympians. We're going and we're getting the best treatment. We get to eat what the king eats. We get to drink his wine. They're getting the best of the land. But not Daniel. Daniel didn't see it that way. So why didn't Daniel see it that way? To turn back to the book of Exodus chapter 34. Exodus chapter 34. Look at starting at verse 10. It says, then God said, behold, I'm going to make a covenant before all your people. I will perform miracles which have not been produced in all the earth, nor among any of the nations. And all the people among whom you live will see the working of the Lord. For it is a fearful thing that I am going to perform with you. Verse 11, be sure to observe that I am commanding you this day. Behold, I am going to drive out the Amorite before you, the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite. Watch yourselves that you make no covenant. Listen, watch yourselves that you make no covenant with the inhabitants of the land into which you are going, or it will become a snare in your midst. But rather, you are to tear down their altars and smash their sacred pillars and cut down their Asherah. God was telling the children of Israel, when you go to these places, I'm going to give them into your hands, but don't serve or worship their gods. Don't do what they do. And I'm afraid that we are living in a time when there is little distinction with the people of God and the people of the world. He says, but rather, you are to tear down their altars and smash their sacred pillars and cut down their Asherah. For you shall not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Otherwise, you might make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they would play the harlot with their gods and sacrifice to their gods. And someone might invite you to eat of his sacrifices, even if it's the king. God is warning them, when you go to these places, they're going to invite you to eat of their table, to participate in their sacrifices. Now, these sacrifices, they would often sacrifice to these foreign deities. So to eat the meat that was offered to these deities was defiling. So this is why Daniel resolved in his mind, he had a made-up mind that he would not eat or defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. And so the first principle of understanding what it means to be a fully devoted follower of Christ is being committed to God. And that is, commitment is first, it's a first-class choice. You have to have a made-up mind that you are not going to compromise. Listen, before you get into a situation, you need to already have the answer. Single ladies, all my single ladies. Before you put yourself in a situation, all my single men, before you put yourself in a situation, you need to already have your mind made up that you are not going to compromise your faith. Married people, you need to understand that it can happen to you too. If you find yourself in a situation and you have not committed to God, if you have not made your mind up that you are not going to walk A lot of us find ourselves in situations because we have not made our minds up that we are not going to defile ourselves. And there will be plenty of opportunities. So if you're going to be a fully devoted follower of Christ, you got to have a made-up mind. You got to understand that commitment is a first-class choice. He said he made up his mind that he would not defile himself with the king's choice food or with the wine which he drank. Which brings me to point number 2. God gives favor to the committed. When you commit, no matter how much pressure you're receiving from the enemy, God gives favor to those that commit to him. It doesn't mean that you won't have difficult times, but it means that in those difficult times, God promises to never leave you or forsake you. He will give you favor, but you got to start with making up your mind that you will not defile yourself. In this world of compromise, in this world of experimentation, you just experiment and see what's going on. And today you can choose to be this sex, and tomorrow you can choose to be that sex. Listen, you got to have a made-up mind that God did not make no mistakes when he made you. Look at what he says here in 8b. He says, so he sought permission because he had a made-up mind. So he sought permission. Now, you got to understand that Daniel is a slave. He really doesn't have a right to ask what he's asking, but he is so committed to God that he is asking a question that he shouldn't even be asking. So he sought permission from the commander of the officials that he might not defile himself. That is the request. That's 2b. 2a is we see the request. 2b, we see the response. Look at verse 9. Now God granted Daniel favor. Let's just stop right there. Daniel is a prisoner. And God gave Daniel favor, much like he did with Joseph. No matter where Joseph went, it says God was always with him. Because God is with you doesn't mean that you won't get thrown into a pit. God was with Joseph when he was in the pit. And God was with Joseph when he was in the penthouse also. That's favor. So his response here is in verse 9. Now God granted Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the commander of the officials. So we see first of all the request and then the response. And then Daniel gets favor. Look at the rebuttal in verse 10. It says, and the commander of the officials said to Daniel, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking more haggard than the youths who are your own age? Then you would make me forfeit my head to the king. So let me translate all that. What he's saying is, listen, if I don't give y'all what the king has ordered, and y'all looking all raggedy and sloppy and tired and broke and hungry, I'm going to have my head cut off. The king is going to literally have my head. But remember in verse 9, God granted Daniel what? Favor. So even in tough situations, if you are committed to God, you got to understand that God will give you favor. And so this commander rebuts Daniel's request, but here in verses 11 through 13, we see Daniel's second request. I love this. Daniel's mind is so made up that that he is going to ask the same question. Look at what he says. He says this, Daniel said to the overseer, whom the commander of the officials had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Verse 12, please test your servants for 10 days, and let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. Daniel says, listen, I don't want what the king is ordering. Just give me some vegetables and just give me the basics. That's all I want. Please test your servants for 10 days and let us be given some vegetables to eat and water to drink. Verse 13, then let our appearance be observed in your presence and the appearance of the youths who are eating the king's choice food, and deal with your servants according to what you see. Now that's faith. That's when you have a made up mind that you're going to do what God tells you to do. You can stand on his word and say, listen, just give us some vegetables and water. We don't want the wine. We don't want the steak. We don't want none of that stuff. And all we want you to do is just for 10 days, Commander. 10 days. Just observe. Tell me what you see when you look at me and my boys, and then you look at the rest of the Hebrew boys. You tell me what you see. Put us to test. That's the second request. And then here in verses 14 through 16, we see the results. So 2A, we see the request, 2B, the response, 2C, the rebuttal, 2D, the second request, and then E, the result. Look at verse 14. So he listened to them. Why did he listen to them? Because they had favor, and they had favor because they were committed to God. They had made up minds. So he listened to them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. I imagine after a few days, he's looking at these guys and he's expecting them to be tired and ashy but these dudes are actually starting to gain a little weight. He tested them for 10 days, verse 15, and at the end of the 10 days, their appearance seemed better, and they were fatter. They're actually eating less, but they're gaining weight. They're looking more healthy. They were fatter than all the youths who had been eating the king's choice food. By the way, this is where we get the Daniel fast. People look at doing the Daniel fast, all vegetables and water, and I never tried it, but if you want to try it, give it a shot. Some of y'all don't want to be fatter anyway, so just keep doing what you're doing, exercise, walk. So they were fatter than all the youths that had been eating from the king's choice food, verse 16. So the overseer continued to withhold their choice food and wine they were to drink, and kept giving them vegetables. God gives favor to the committed. Does it ever seem like some folk, God just keeps on blessing them? You ever see people and you just kind of wonder, like, why does God just keep on blessing them? I think if you look a little bit closer, you might find that they are committed to God. When you are committed to God, as we said on last week, when you have an open hand, when you're committed to God, God has no problem putting seed in your hand that you might be a sower of seed. But if you're a closed hand person, Not just with your finances, but with your life. If you're closed as it relates to serving God, then you can't expect God to continue to show you favor when you've not been a good steward over that which He's given you. Don't pray the prayer of Jabez. Extend my territory, if you hadn't properly dealt with the territory that you have. Commitment is a first-class choice. Secondly, God gives favor to the committed. Thirdly, we see here in verses 17 that God gives spiritual facts to those who are committed to Him. Facts, that is information, that is God speaks to those who are committed to Him. It says, as for these 4 youths, verse 17, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. Now, if you remember back in verse 3, the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of his officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles, youths in whom was no defect, who were good-looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning and knowledge, who had the ability for serving in the king's court. In verses 3 and 4, it lets you know here in verse 17 where the source of all of that came from. That came from God. As for these 4 youths, God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature and wisdom. Everything that you have, God gave it to you. And so when you're committed to God, God does not have a problem giving you favor, but you must understand that you are who you are because God gave it to you. Yes. Lene, you can sing that voice that you have that voice because God gave it to you. And Keisha, your voice is not your voice. You don't own it. You owe God your voice. Rosenblatt, when you're on that bass, that's not your bass. That's God's bass. Brother Fred, when you bongling, you bongle for Jesus. Because those are not your bongles. Your congos, those are His. Every one of us, God gave a gift. And some He gave more than one gift. And our gifts are not for us. They're for Him. So we offer ourselves, as Paul would say, as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable unto God. Our ushers, guess what? God gave you the ability to be hospitable. There's some people we don't want at the door. Praise God. But we want you there. You do what you do as unto the Lord. Your commitment is not to Rising Star Baptist Church. Your commitment must be a commitment to God. Deacons, everybody that has something to do. In fact, if you're a member and you don't have nothing to do, you need to reevaluate your commitment to God. Listen, when folk are committed to God, it's no problem getting them to serve the way they do. Sister Rose been doing it for 80-something years. I see y'all back there continuing to serve. Sister Gordon still singing in the choir, even when she don't know the words. She's just smiling and moving her mouth. Unto the Lord. Amen. Listen, God has been so good to us, we ought to give Him our very best. And listen, I told my son this morning, that your worship is to make sure that the sound sounds good. Let's get here on time. Listen, everything And the one who gave us all that we have, we give him a tip. That's not good. That's unacceptable that we would not give God our very best every Sunday. And furthermore, every day. Because he's been that good to us. As for these 4 youths, God gave them. Say, God gave them. God gave them knowledge and intelligence in every branch of literature. Those who have intelligence, those who are studious, you're smart not because you're smarter than the other person. God has given you a mind so that you can use your mind to give him glory. He says he gave wisdom in the branch of literature and wisdom. Daniel even understood all kinds of visions and dreams. He had a special gift, God gives spiritual facts to those who are committed to him. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not into your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will do what? God will give you facts on how to make the crooked straight if you commit to him. Now, let me tell you what commitment is not. You know, I do counseling quite a bit, of marriage counseling, and done several marriages here in the last several years. And on occasion, the people are living together before they get married, and they say they're in a committed relationship, but really they're not really committed. Commitment is when you live together with someone. I'm sorry, a lack of commitment is when you live with someone, but you won't take that next step to marry them. Because then it's official. Say, before then, y'all get in an argument, you can go to your place, and they can go to their place. But when you marry, your place is their place. And you committed to working through the difficult times. See, folks like to be members of the church, but they're not really committed to Christ. Your name can be on the rolls here at Rising Star, but if you're not committed to Christ, then you will just be a good Rising Star Baptist Church member. Give every now and then, show up every now and then, but that's not the goal. The goal is not to serve periodically, but the goal is to give your life for the sake of the gospel. And so, being committed to God requires that you understand that commitment is a first-class choice. You got to have a made-up mind. Secondly, you must understand that God gives favor to the committed. Thirdly, God gives spiritual facts. That is, God will speak to you. He'll reveal some things to you, like in 2 Kings 6. I remember the story. When all of the army is circling around the children of Israel, and they ask the question. In fact, let's turn back here real quick. 2 Kings 6. I love this story. Verse 11, 2 Kings 6:11. Now the part of the king of Aram was enraged over this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, "Will you tell me which of us it is for the king of Israel?" One of his servants said, "No, my lord, O king, but Elijah the prophet, who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom." So he said, "Go and see where he is, that I may send him and take him, that I may take him." And it was told him, saying, "Behold, he is in Donaldson." He sent horses and chariots and And they came by night and surrounded the city. Oh man, Elijah is in trouble now. Verse 15. Now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and gone out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was circling the city. And that's how it happens at times when you commit to God. The enemy is going to send out his army to circle around you. You got to expect that. He says, and his servant said to him, at last, my master, what shall we do? He's thinking, this is the end. So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Now I laugh because this attendant does not know that there's a spiritual army around them and nothing can happen. And so there are times in our lives when it seems like we're circled by the enemy and there is no way out. But we've got to take courage and know that those who are with us outnumber that those who are against us. It says now verse 15, now when the attendant of the man of God had risen early and had gone out before, and behold, an army with horses and chariots was circling the city. And his servant said to him, at last, my master, what shall we do? So he answered, do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Verse 17, then Elijah prayed and said, O Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. When you're committed to God, you see things that other people don't see. Although it might look dire to those who are around you, you can still have faith knowing that those who are with us outnumber those who are with them. And so he said, he prayed, he says, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elijah. Listen, when you're committed to God, you got to know that greater is he that is within you than he who is in the world. And sometimes it looks like the enemy has you surrounded and there is no way for you to go. And just pray that God will open your eyes and you can see with your spiritual eyes. God will take care of you. Commitment is a first-class choice. God gives favor to the committed. God gives spiritual facts. He speaks to those who are committed to him. Which brings me to the fourth point. Only those who are committed are functional in God's service. That is useful. Only those that are committed are functional in God's service. Look at verses 18 through 21. It says, and at the end of the days which the king had specified for presenting them, the commander of the officials presented them before Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and out of all of them, not one was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's personal service. As for every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king consulted them, he found them 10 times better. Notice that Daniel asked to test us for 10 days. It's interesting now that they find that these men are 10 times better. For every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king consulted them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and conjurers who were in all his realm. And Daniel continued into the first year of Cyrus the king. Only those who are committed are functional or useful in God's service. Listen, I know we all really want to be useful in God's service, but you cannot be useful with a half-hearted commitment. You just can't. You can be a blessing to some people when God has given you gifts, but you can't be functionally useful if you're not totally committed to God. I'm not talking about being committed to Rising Star, because if you're committed to God, you're going to be committed to His church. One of his local organizations. It doesn't have to be Rising Star, but if you're committed to God, you should be committed to the organization that represents God, His church. Listen, don't tell me you're committed to God and you don't go to church. Listen, the church is what Christ is building. He said, upon this rock I will build my church. Ecclesia, those called out of the world, make up the organization called the church. When you're telling me that I hear people say it all the time, and you see it on the internet, I have my personal relationship with God. We applaud that. We all have a personal relationship with God, but we're connected to a body. Your gift is not for you. Your gift is not benefiting the church, His agency here on earth, then you are not really committed to God. No, that's hard, but it's true. Verse 19. The king talked with them, and out of them not one was found like Daniel and his boys. And so they entered the king's service. Now, isn't it interesting now that these young Hebrew boys are now, first of all, they had a made-up mind, and God showed them favor, and now they're entering into the king's service, representing God. And these are pagans. King Nebuchadnezzar is a pagan. Now you have these young believers that are committed to God, working for a pagan. Their boss is pagan. What am I talking about? Listen, your job, wherever you go to work every day, you have an opportunity to represent God. You have an opportunity to show your commitment to God as you work. Listen, don't be taking 45 minutes for a lunch break if you only got 30. Don't be stealing the pencils and pens and taking them home. After all, they owe you anyway. That's stealing. Your commitment to God should make you a better employee. Be honest about what you do at your job because you're representing Him. Amen? And then lastly, God shows favor to Daniel and his friends. You'll note that this is chapter 2, verses 1 through 49. And so we'll get out of here around 3 o'clock. You know, chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And this dream was so disturbing for King Nebuchadnezzar. Ironically, God positioned Daniel in the right place at the right time to address the need of the king. King Nebuchadnezzar first goes to his magicians and conjurers and sorcerers, and he says, listen, this is what we're going to do. I had a dream, and I need y'all to first tell me what the dream was, and then interpret the dream. So most of the chapter, they're going back and forth. They said, listen, king, that request is unreasonable. You want us to tell you what you dream? How about you tell us the dream, and then we can tell you what it means? The king was not happy. So listen, if y'all don't tell me what I dream and what the dream means, we killing everybody. All y'all. The false prophets were scrambling then. The king, listen, this is, and they're going back and forth in this chapter 2. They're going back and forth. Come on, king. Be reasonable, dog. That's too much, man. You want us to tell you the dream? Just give us a little bone. We can tell you what it means and all. So they're not able to interpret the dream. So the king Nebuchadnezzar sent out his boys. They getting all of the magicians and the conjurers and all of those folk. He getting them ready. He's about to kill them all. They go to Daniel and the Hebrew boys, and Daniel was like, "What's up with this, man? What's up, man? What's going on?" And he tells them, "Man, listen, this is what happens. This is what happened. The king had a dream, and he went to the conjurers, and they couldn't tell him. So he told them if they can't interpret the dream, then all of y'all gonna die." Well, Daniel says, "Hold up for 1 second. God has given me something. Let me just pray about it. And so, don't kill nobody. I can interpret the king's dream." Long story short, verse 17, chapter 2. I love this. After telling the man, and chill out, man, don't go around killing nobody. Verse 17, Daniel says, "Then Daniel went to his house and informed his friends." Don't miss this. Don't miss this. Listen, if you are not committed to God, listen to me. If you're not fully committed to God, find somebody else who is and hang out with them. Just find somebody and just cling on to them. He says Daniel went to his house and informed his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah about the matter, verse 18, so that they might request compassion from who? Nebuchadnezzar? They understand that this is a matter that's much bigger than Nebuchadnezzar. They request compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. And so they prayed. Verse 28. Verse 27, Daniel answered before the king and said, "As for the mystery about which the king has inquired, neither wise men, nor conjurers, nor magicians, nor diviners are able to declare to the king." Verse 28, "However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." I love that. "And he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place and in the latter days." Verse 30, "But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me, for any wisdom residing in me." See what Daniel does? Daniel is giving all the credit and the glory to God. He's not taking or robbing any of God's glory. He says, "Listen, this is not because I'm so smart." He says, "For than any other living man, but for the purpose of making the interpretation known to the king, and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind." Daniel says, listen, all that happened because of God. Now you got to understand that Nebuchadnezzar is pagan. He doesn't know God. And Daniel uses that as a platform to introduce his God. Verse 46. through verse 49 of chapter 2 of Daniel. God shows favor to Daniel's friends. It says, after this interpretation was made, he says, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did homage to Daniel and gave orders to present to him an offering and fragrant incense. The king answered to Daniel and said, surely, listen, your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings and revealer of mysteries, since you have been able to reveal this mystery. He's paying homage to Daniel's God. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel made requests. He says, listen, there's something that I need you to do, O king. Daniel made request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the administration of the province of Babylon, while Daniel was at the king's court. That's favor. It's good to have people of faith around you, because the truth is it gets tough sometimes, amen? I ain't talking about being super spiritual. I'm talking about people who really have a relationship with God. And God gives favor to those who will commit to him. And sometimes the reality is it just does not seem like God is showing us favor. But he is. He's promised to never leave us or forsake us. And listen, when you're low, go to your friends, your faith friends, and ask them to pray about the matter and watch God take care of it. God requires that we be committed to him. And it first starts with having a made-up mind. I'll share this as we close. For years, I struggled with sin. For years. And you know how we are there. We know that we're sinning and we know that it's wrong. And we justify in our minds that God is so loving that he is not going to hold me accountable for what I'm doing. And I can remember going to church and singing in the choir, teaching Sunday school, and still living a less than committed life. And finally I got to a place where I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And what I'm talking about is coming to the end of yourself where you will say, I'm tired of giving God 80%. He's been so good to me. How many times am I going to pray, Lord, if you get me out of this one? And he gets me out, and I find myself doing the same thing over and over and over. See, commitment is not what you say. It's not lip service. Commitment is action. And so I can remember crying out to God, saying, Lord, I'm for real this time. And I was for real. I shared with my wife, one day I went AWOL on, I went just cold turkey